Now, in order to be able to interpret the geologic sedimentary record, we have to go somewhere where sedimentary rock is deposited, right? Sediment is deposited and then it's lithified into rock. And often this coincides with certain tectonic settings. So, for example, we get a lot of sedimentary deposits at convergent plate boundaries. And this is because as oceanic plates collide with continental plates, all of the sediment that was not all, but most of the sediment that was on the ocean floor is getting scraped off and pushed up into what we call an accretionary wedge as that oceanic tectonic plate is subsiding down into the mantle. So that accretionary wedge is preserving a lot of the sediment that was once on the seafloor. It's also producing a little dip in elevation behind it, a little wrinkle that we call a forearc basin, where a lot of the sediment that's eroding off of the continent eventually settles into. Right, so these convergent plate boundaries are areas with a lot of sediment preservation, a lot of sediment buildup. This is a very common depositional area. Now, convergent plate boundaries aren't the only places where you can find a lot of sediment deposition. You can also find it at passive continental margins, like where we live in Georgia, right? Passive continental margins, we used to be a divergent plate boundary. We used to be located on the Atlantic mid-ocean ridge. But as new seafloor was created, we were pushed farther and farther and farther away from that divergent plate boundary. And now we're just on a passive margin away from the plate boundary. And in this passive margin, it's fairly low lying. It's the base of a lot of mountains. And so we receive that sediments that's washed down from the mountains through these rivers and eventually deposited in the passive margin. Right? This is where you find a lot of these huge river deltas. So as these river deltas are deposited in these passive margins, we get a lot of what we call riverine sediment or fluvial sediment reaching the ocean and depositing here.